To know is to take, receive, and hold with certainty the perception of a thing, precluding all doubt of its existence. We know that truth and falsehood express ideas incompatible with each other. So, did you know that we're not justified by the law of Moses? We're not justified by keeping rules. In Galatians chapter 3, verse 10, it reads, all who depend on the law, we're speaking of the Mosaic law, or for those of you that are more familiar with the term, the Ten Commandments, those who are seeking to be justified, made right, by obedience to the law of rituals, are under a curse, in doomed disappointment and destruction. For it is written in the scriptures, cursed, accursed, devoted to destruction, doomed to eternal punishment, to everyone who does not continue to abide, live, and remain by all the precepts and commands written in the book of the law, and to practice them. And in James 2:10 it reads, for whosoever keeps the law as a whole, but stumbles and offends in one single instance, has become guilty of breaking it all. So we will be discussing truth based on our text scripture, John 8:32. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Come back and join us as we discuss that topic. Hi, I'm Jackie Stewart, and discussing the topic of truth with me as Pastor Richard Stewart of New Creation Fellowship. Thank you, Pastor Stewart, for staying with me in the second part.
Thank you for having me.
And we were speaking of the Mosaic law and how that it has been disannulled and fulfilled by Jesus, and that the shall nots have been overcome by the shalls. In other words, instead of us trying to not do something, we are encouraging, commanded of God to do something.
Things to do, not things not to do.
Right.
And addressing this subject, the law, and certain things that the scriptures are written in a way that we should know certain things. And they're written to us as though we do know them, or we're willing to accept the knowledge of them and the truth of them. For instance, in Romans 6:6, the first two words of the scripture say, we know. Mm-hmm. And this is from the Amplified translation. It says, we know that our old, unrenewed self was nailed to the cross with him, in order that our body, which is the instrument of sin, might be made ineffective or inactive for evil, that we might no longer be slave to sins. It says we know this. It says this is one of the things that we know. Did we know this? Do we know this? Have we given any thought to it? When we look at this thing about the law of Moses, we need to realize that what the scripture says about the law is what we should go on. In Romans 3:19, it says, we know that everything in the law is written for those who are under its power. We know this. According to the scriptures, we know that everything in the law was written for those who are under its power. Well, who was under its power? Who was the law given to? The children of Israel. It was never given to the Gentiles. He goes on to say, the law says these things to stop anyone from making excuses and to let God show that the whole world is guilty. And in the 20th verse it says, God doesn't accept people simply because they obey the law. Mm-hmm. No, indeed, all the law does is to point out our sin.